Hello! Yes, hello and welcome to the Willow Creek Music Museum build. So I've been working on something of a renovation project for Willow Creek, where I've been either renovating, adjusting, or even completely rebuilding all of the lots within Willow Creek. And hopefully, I'll be able to do this for every lot in the game for all of the worlds. I'm not sure how long exactly that might take, but I'm kind of willing to put in the effort. It's a little bit of a fun challenge. And it's pretty common and popular for a lot of people to do like these massive renovation projects for the game and then like have that save file they either upload for other people to have or even for themselves, where when they start a new save file, that's the one they use. And this is what I've been working on. Now for the Willow Creek Museum, I really wanted to put a focus onto music because as far as I believe, Willow Creek is actually inspired by the state of Louisiana in the US. And Louisiana has a lot of musical history, especially with like jazz and all that stuff. So I thought it'd be fun to really focus on music being the theme for the museum. And I've also been doing a little bit of research regarding the types of houses and architecture that you find in Louisiana, more around the New Orleans region in particular. And they have this entire style called Greek Revival that I saw once in a while. And I decided to base this build on the Greek Revival style, which was very unique and interesting for me because I have never really built in this style before. So it was a lot of learning, a lot of adjusting, a lot of like building things, deleting them, changing them. It was a tough fight. But in the end, I think this turns out pretty good. Now, I did have a reference picture when I was doing this build, and I really liked it. But unfortunately, the left and right wings that you see on this building, the reference picture had curved walls for that. And as you may know, curved walls in The Sims don't really work well. In fact, the windows that you can use on curved walls is actually a very small selection. And the windows they had available to me were not what I wanted. So I had to scrap the curved walls idea altogether. And that kind of made this build take a more box shape that I don't really like, but I think I managed to make it look good regardless. Now, this build also features a heck ton of columns, which is part of the Greek Revival architectural style and all that stuff. So I do apologize that the columns are going to look wonky once in a while. I fought with them so much. A lot of moving them around, trying to figure out the spacing. It was a nightmare, especially because I don't actually build with this many columns ever. It was totally different. This whole thing was way out of my groove of what I typically do. So a lot of experimenting, a lot of deleting, but I learned a lot. So you're definitely going to be seeing the columns kind of like teleport around a bit, change color maybe, or change what columns they are. Right now I'm using a lot of placeholders. I tend to use a lot of placeholder items when I build in general. So if something looks kind of weird at first, don't worry, I probably fix it. I did a lot of experimenting too with like colors and themes and all that stuff for everything. I know that like white walls are really common in this style, as well as iron fencing and whatnot. So I did try to at least stick to that. And looking back on this footage, it looks like I played a little bit with the actual Greek columns a little bit here. In hindsight, I probably should have kept those because they do look pretty good. The ones I ended up using are these cottage living ones, which still are pretty good. It still works, but yeah, in hindsight, I think the actual Greek columns would have been really nice. And here, I'm kind of playing with the roof a bit. The thing about using reference pictures that I struggle with a lot is that they don't always show you a good shot of the roof, which is pretty bad because I think a lot of people, I'm not alone in this, a lot of people struggle with roofing in this game, and the lack of good aerial shots of buildings definitely doesn't help. So I'm kind of starting with a flat roof on this first, but yeah, it doesn't work out. This does change. And yeah, even looking back on this now, I'm glad that I didn't keep with the flat roof because I'm not very good at making the flat roof. Some people can really make these look realistic and nice. I'm still learning in that department. I also struggled a little bit with the theming for this build because as you see next door, that is not an EA build. In fact, the building next door is another build that I did for this renovation project, and that is actually a jazz club, which is also on the gallery. A lot of my builds that I'm doing to renovate Willow Creek have been ending up on the gallery, and I'll make sure all of those are completely uploaded for you later. Probably around the same time that I end up posting the save file for other people to kind of download and check out. So I thought it'd be really cool to have the Music History Museum directly next door to the Jazz Club. But it's kind of hard because since I rebuilt every single lot in this downtown area, I wanted them to all look somewhat cohesive, like they look good next to each other. And that's kind of hard sometimes, getting multiple lots to look like they match each other without being the exact same thing, you know? I didn't want to get like same house syndrome, if you get what I mean, but I also wanted every building to look kind of unique from each other as well. I fought with the windows on this build quite a lot as well because it's such a big building. I didn't want a lot of empty wall space on the outside. I wanted it to look pretty from the outside. But obviously the problem with having a lot of windows is that you lose wall space. And this is supposed to be a museum that's going to like feature paintings and wall art. And obviously you can't see wall art with the cutaway walls. Internal walls all disappear when you do that. So I didn't want to feature a bunch of paintings on the inside walls. I wanted them on the outsides that you can see with cutaway walls active. But I also wanted windows. It was kind of a bit of a no-win situation. But I think I did manage to get a decent wall-to-window ratio for this build. Especially with the medium wall height. I've been using medium wall height for this Willow Creek style a lot because that giant frieze on the top floor seems to be a really common theme in Louisiana-styled buildings, which is just kind of like goes more into new things that I haven't done before. So this build kind of challenged me a bit with medium wall height, tons of columns, balconies, friezes. It's been very fun to learn how to build like this. I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most about doing this whole renovation project for every world. I'm really looking forward to learning how to build in multiple styles. And this southern US Louisiana style has been very interesting and unique from what I've ever done before. So I ended up replacing the roof here, as you see, and this does look a little bit better, I think. It's not the most glamorous looking roof by any means, but I think it's a bit more practical, and I think it looks better than the flat roof altogether. And by now, I've kind of decided to focus on black and white monochrome exterior. White siding seems to be really, really popular in this region, but I also wanted to make it look kind of fancy too, so I ended up using like marble for the outside flooring and the stairs. It just looked really pretty, especially with the vampire railings. Yeah, I ended up using the vampire railings for the balconies and everything like that, and it looks really good, especially since, as I mentioned before, iron railing seems to be common for this style of build. Now at this point, I've pretty much solidified what the entire outside is going to look like, but I still had an awful lot of area outside. Despite how big the building is, it's still a very big lot. So I had a lot of empty space that I had to try and think of to fill in as well. So I ended up kind of doing a pseudo mini concert area for like live music. It's nothing too over the top. It looks very small. I assume probably for like lesser gatherings and whatnot. Small event shows, especially with like all of the walking space in the background, with all of like the tables and the fishing beach. I thought this looked like a pretty good spot for a small music venue. So that's what I'm setting up over here. I was really indecisive about how to build this exterior little stage. At first I thought about making it look different, like it was built after the fact much later. I ended up copying the style of the museum just to kind of like bring it all together to look a little bit nicer. And I kind of wanted to set it up to be at least a little bit secluded, so I'm putting some hedge walls up to kind of like make it a little bit more private, a little bit more pretty as well, instead of being all completely open. And I had to do a lot of moving around. I rebuilt this stage like many times. I think originally I tried to make it like a, what you call it? A pergola? Is that how you say the word? I think it's called a pergola. I think I tried that at first and I didn't like it. I did do a lot of moving, readjusting. I wanted it to be kind of centered because I have like this whole symmetrical theme going on. Oof. I struggled so much with what to do with the rest of the space. And because I didn't completely know what to do, and because I was kind of keeping this clean, symmetrical look, I didn't want to do like a winding path for a garden, so I ended up actually just digging out a pond in this front spot. Because, I mean, it's supposed to be Louisiana. There's a lot of like water and ponds and stuff. I still have to rebuild the park for Willow Creek, which I am definitely going to put tons of pond work everywhere. That's both exciting and kind of scary because even this little pond took a long time. I wanted it to look kind of bean-shaped and I didn't want it to look too rough or jagged, to be somewhat natural looking. And then these ponds look really weird unless you landscape them well. So landscaping kind of got away from me in this whole thing because I think these ponds look very weird and out of place unless you do it correctly. So I'm putting a lot of time into thinking about, you know, putting flowers around, a lot of the ferns. I tried to look at a lot of the foliage in the surrounding area and kind of mimic and copy it over to here so that it looks more in place with the rest of the world. And that included adding these little pink trees because there's tons of these in this little area, off the lot included. So I think adding the pink trees kind of brings in the museum to look really in place with the rest of the world. And they're just absolutely cute. I feel like they don't match a lot of neighborhoods. I'm definitely happy to use these when and where I can. And this part is really sped up because it's just laying down rocks. I had to super speed through this because I ended up placing rocks around the entire periphery of the pond because even though it's kind of tedious and it's a lot of object placement, I feel like it makes the ponds look better and a lot more clean too. I thought that the pond outside of the museum would at least be kind of like done up and beautiful and kept. So that included placing rocks around the whole thing, and I really, really like it. If you just grab like a whole bunch of different types of rocks and then you size them up and down and line them together and rotate them with like Alt or whatever, it can look really good. And then of course the cattails and stuff like that. Very, very good for this region. And this was also my first time I could logically place an alligator spawner. Because, like, it's funny to put an alligator in any pond, but in a place that's supposed to be Louisiana, it makes sense. I can put an alligator in this pond, and it's totally normal. Oh no. I wonder if I should put a lot of alligators in the park ponds, too. Ooh. That's a fun idea. So this is a lot of landscaping for the most part because I fully committed to the museum's size and theme, and how big it is and all that stuff. So that means it's landscaping time. I haven't even touched the interior of the building yet. This is just landscaping. This build took me so long. Partially because this was my first ever museum build. I have never built a museum in The Sims before until now. So by all fronts, this build was very challenging. It was very different than anything I've done before, and I learned a lot. This whole rebuild project has been teaching me a lot about how to build new things. So I think if you ever feel like you want to experiment a bit and try building things that you've never done before, a save file renovation project is very, very fun, and I do recommend it. It's just a very daunting task because there's so much to do. But at this point, I've pretty much finished my landscaping, and now I'm just doing the outside lighting. I really like the romantic garden lanterns. I think they're very, very pretty. And they match the style of this build as well. I briefly thought about doing a romantic garden for the outside because I kind of would have mixed really well with the Greek Revival style. But I ultimately decided against it because, like I said, I was trying to keep everything kind of symmetrical And Romantic Garden seems to be a lot more of like a winding path, stone rocks and all that stuff, and a little bit more wild than what this looks like. It doesn't seem like something you'd find in downtown New Orleans. It may be one of these days I'll do like a really beautiful Romantic Garden build. So we are finally inside of the museum. And at this point, I've definitely put tons and tons of time into this build. I had something of a game plan for what I wanted for the interior. I know I wanted to feature a lot of the music-based paintings they have. I know I wanted to put a lot of instruments in here of all different kinds. I'm placing a small bathroom on the downstairs over here, and I tend to make all of my bathrooms just neutral because I think it's really frustrating to have like gendered bathrooms when you're playing the game. And you click on your sim to go to one toilet and then they can't use it because it's like the other bathroom that they can't walk into. And then you have to click on the other bathroom and then try to do that. And it's definitely annoying when you have a bunch of interactions queued up and then you like click on to someone else and then they never ended up using the bathroom because it was the wrong one. So pretty much in every single build I do, I just use the neutral doors. So that way you can just click on whichever and just leave it. And I was having a bit of spacing issue in here. Like I kept like going between thinking, is this too big? Is it too much? Wait, no, maybe I don't have enough space. It was really, really weird. And that's kind of just the downside of doing the entire outside and the landscaping and then doing the interior. But I managed to cram everything I wanted in here. So I put a little reception desk down and I put a little gnome sitting there in the chair because I thought it was kind of cute. Now over here, this tiny little violin is the Virtuoso violin. And if you don't know what this thing is, this violin costs 15,000 simoleons. It is absurdly expensive. So of course, I had to feature it in the museum, and I have it behind the little red roped fencing and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of a cute thing to include. Now, these paintings that I'm placing here are part of a series called The Ode to Jazz. And these were my biggest inspirations for doing the music theme for the museum altogether. So these are all base game paintings. And it kind of like just hones in on how jazz was really important to New Orleans in general. I made a place for all of the Ode to Jazz paintings, and I'm using these little kiosk things from Get Together. I think they're hidden objects, I believe. If you do the cheat for show hidden objects, you can find these. And so they are like perfect little plaques to kind of show as displays that like talk about the painting and all that stuff. And of course the little light that shines directly onto the artwork as well. And this is more of the Ode to Jazz section. I wanted to line these all up together, but it just wasn't turning out. So I ended up moving where all these are at. And the interesting thing about these paintings, so like, do you ever read the descriptions for like the items? You've learned some interesting stuff here and there. Apparently there's like a whole thing about a person called Princess Cordelia. These paintings are apparently made in honor of her personal jazz band or something. I guess Princess Cordelia was, well, a noble from Willow Creek that had like a love of pirates or something like that. And it kind of like told like a mini story about how she had to leave her personal jazz band behind on a ship because they didn't have space or something like that. I don't know. Something about her running away to be with pirates, and it's like a whole thing. And I briefly considered making like a wing of the museum talking about and featuring Princess Cordelia, but I just couldn't fit it in, not without excluding certain things that I wanted to have in or losing the plot of the museum, because I'm trying to keep a consistent theme throughout this place. And as nice as the Cordelia stuff is, I just couldn't figure out how to put it in. But it is kind of cool. I highly recommend like actually reading some of the item descriptions. You learn some interesting stuff in there. Now over here, I'm placing a little display cabinet. This is from Jungle Adventure, and it can feature like a whole bunch of little knickknacks. So I put tons of like these awards in here. They're not all music awards. I think only one of them technically is. But you know, it's kind of a cute little trophy case. And in my playtesting, I discovered Sims love this thing. This was the favorite thing of most of the NPCs in the game, so they kind of all gather around that one spot. I don't know what it is. They love that thing. It's their favorite. But I put all kinds of cute little trophies in there. And then upstairs, I wanted to feature some of the interesting instruments as well. So I have this upright piano with the painting on it because I thought that was really cool. I thought a custom painted piano would be really neat to have in a museum, including the pipe organ. And this guitar that I placed down is like a special one. I think it's a career reward. I just don't remember from what. It has like an autograph on it. It's called like the Rock Legend guitar. So it has an autograph, and I thought that'd be really cool to put as also another cool display piece. Now, a lot of these instruments I'm putting behind fences so that Sims won't be able to play them, but I do put some instruments in here, like I am right now, of things that your Sim can pick up and play. So not everything is completely locked away from you. So I put the Grim Reaper guitar in there along with the werewolf one because these are super special, cool looking ones that I think are better display pieces. And then the other two unique guitars in the back that you can play. And then I put a little keyboard over there as well. That's the one that your Sim can play besides the Wedding Stories one I also placed downstairs. So this is still very much a place that your Sim can visit to work on their instrument skills. I also had this little idea that'd be fun to kind of display different forms of like music players throughout the ages. So I have this little section full of like record players. So I have the big record player, the little one from Modern Lux, and then the special one you get from Prom Night. And then over here, a little bit more modern stuff like the tiny radio, jukebox, and then the most nice modern stereotype. So it's not just a music museum, but it also shows, the different types of ways that people have played music over the ages as well. It's supposed to be a history museum. I was just kind of like trying to fill in space at this point, but I definitely like the display case of the old record players and stuff like that. This is also one of the few times I got to use that big rug with like the keyboard print on it from City Living, I think. I almost never get to use that thing, even though it's super duper cool. So it was perfect in here as well. It was definitely one of those things that I planned to put in the build from the very beginning. Now I'm just trying to figure out more of like the fancy decoration stuff because I have most of like the museum display pieces thought out and placed. So now I'm just trying to make the rest of it look really pretty. So like sizing up these vampire rugs to be a runner down this middle part just to fill it in a bit more so it doesn't look so empty. So yeah, I sized up these vampire rugs, put them as runners down the middle in a symmetrical fashion, and I think that looked pretty good. One of the things that the museum requires you to place is an easel. This is supposed to be a music museum, but, the game has requirements for certain lots, so I did place an easel over here, and I might as well make it look kind of nice since it had to be part of the build. So I also included like little paint buckets and the artist stand and all that stuff, just to make it look like it's not there just because I had to. I wanted to accommodate for it. So I also included like a little chess table out here, just other things your Sim could do besides music. Yeah, putting in plants and trying to make it just look pretty in general. Fill in all this empty space. And I used these base game curtains that I literally never use. I don't think I recall ever using these before in a build. And they fit really nicely in the museum. The bright red kind of added a pretty color splash into all of these browns and blacks and whites and all this stuff. And they're supposed to be kind of like show curtains anyway. It gives me like the feel of like the music theater in a way. I was really happy to be able to include that in here. And they fit the windows perfectly too, which thank goodness. Sometimes it feels like pulling teeth to try and find a curtain that not only is the color you want, but fits the windows that you have everywhere. And at this point, the white staircase wasn't looking as good, so I ended up replacing it with this rich brown. And now I'm kind of going around and placing these topiaries everywhere because I kind of had like this manicured topiary look for the whole place, so I kind of capitalized on that. So those are going pretty much everywhere outside. And I like how they have a lot of varieties of them. They have like the single shrub, the double, and then the triple. So you get to kind of have the same theme, but mix it up here and there. So it's not all the same plant in every single spot. And now I'm going through and I'm deleting all of my tiny little ceiling lights to light up the area so I can kind of put in the actual lighting. Lighting is usually the very last thing I do in a build at this point. I tried really, really hard to make it not too dark in here. And that's hard when you have a big open space without filling the whole room with ceiling lights. The wall lights in this game don't provide enough light. They make builds so dim, even though they're very pretty. So I did still put them everywhere, but anywhere I felt like it was too dark, I did still include a ceiling light. And then on the outside, I started to make sure that everything was also very pretty. I put like those little stage lights to light up the outside and all whatnot, but I think this is about like the end of the build portion. So I'm gonna pop into live mode and I'm gonna give you a tour. All right, and here we are in live mode, and I got my boy Steve here. This is one of the Sims that I made to fill in some of the empty houses in Willow Creek. This is the guy that you saw standing outside while I was building the whole lot. So this is what the finished build looks like, and I really, really like this. I think it turned out beautifully. I'm very proud of this. Despite all the challenges and the rebuilding and the bulldozing and the changing of themes and colors, I think I got it. So we have a very monochrome style, white siding, black roofs, and black lined windows and all that stuff, and we have tons of wings and balconies all around this thing. It's a monster. We have the pond that I built out here as well. I added a little spawner for the ducks, and once in a while you might see a cheeky little gator peek up from below. I don't see the gator right now, but they're in there. Pond turned out looking pretty good. I feel like the rocks really make it look natural with everything else around it. The landscaping turned out really pretty. We have the live music venue out here in the back. It's not too overcomplicated, it's very simplistic, but your sim could come here and bust with their guitar or their violin whenever they like. People are already starting to filter in. That's great. Glad to know that the museum is attracting attention. And like I said, Sims seem to really love this display case, so it's probably not a bad one to kind of like pick up and maybe put somewhere else instead of the front entrance. Oh no. I had a little gnome sitting here, but as I noticed, when Sims are sitting here in front of this display case and they start talking to each other, they'll sit down in this chair. So I kept having like Eliza Pancake sit down and meld with the gnome, and it didn't look good. So the little guy had to go. But we have a beautiful reception area, some trash cans out here at the front entrance because this is very much a no drinks allowed kind of place. So we have like all these ode to jazz paintings on the walls with our little plaques in front of it, wall lights to kind of highlight, and these beautiful red curtains that really pull all the colors of the build together. The beautiful piano from Wedding Stories, our very simple bathroom, nothing too extravagant. This extremely expensive violin, the $15,000 violin that's protected, do not touch. We got some regular portraits up here. I imagine these would be like musicians from Willow Creek's olden days or something like that, and then like more modern stuff on this side. Now upstairs, we have our painted upright piano here that's absolutely so pretty. I wanted to include at least one painted piano in this build, along with the pipe organ, which is also super fancy. It feels like it belonged in a museum. More of the Ode to Jazz painting series. Out here, I also have a chess table for Sims to use, the easel, which has been used before, which is pretty good that Sims are actually going to interact with this autonomously. On this side, we have the guitars display. So we have the Rock Legend one with like the cool autograph on it, the sick Grim Reaper one, which is really cool. I didn't know that the eyes kind of like glowed like that. That is super cool. I know when a sim plays this as well, it generates like this black dark cloud under their feet. It's super neat. And then the werewolf one, because that's also just such a cool guitar. And then two normal ones that your sim can interact with and play as they desire. We have the record player display on this side, and then the slightly more modernized music players on this side, a keyboard that your sim is free to play with as much as they want, with this gorgeous rug that I was really happy to finally use. It's still a little bit dim in here. It was the best I could do without filling this building up the wazoo with ceiling lights. It's just so hard to really light up these massive open builds with no smaller rooms in between. But all in all, I'm very pleased with how this build turned out. I think it looks very good in the Willow Creek world. It looks pretty decent standing next to all the other builds that I've done, which these are all also on my gallery if you want to download them. I also rebuilt the Willow Creek Library. This is a retail lot, which has like a bakery and a knit shop. And then this is the jazz club. And then, of course, now our music museum. I have fully rebuilt all of the Willow Creek downtown. And a disclaimer, these are not base game builds. I didn't want to restrict myself with base game. I really wanted to be creative and do as I desired with these. So I do apologize that the pack content for these might be a bit extreme. That is the unfortunate reality of The Sims 4. There's a stupid price tag attached to this game. So you can find me on the gallery as PinkyDragon01, just like I am here on YouTube. And the lot is uploaded as the Willow Creek Music Museum. And yes, it does use a lot of packs. My apologies. So yeah, and that'll be it. Feel free to give the video a like if you would like, and maybe even subscribe. And I hope to see you next time. Bye!